So the title of this story is Things He Wasn't Supposed to Do. I wrote it in 1995 at Ball State University when I was taking a fiction writing class from Margaret Kingery de Moblin. It was a time when I was studying for my degree in elementary education, but I wanted to look into writing. It was something I'd always done a little bit of, always been interested in, and I felt like it was a time to really get some good instruction and feedback. And those classes with Margaret were definitely that. So this was a story that was workshopped in class and was commented on by Margaret and all the other students. And at the end of the workshop process, I had a list of things to correct and change and some thoughts about how to expand the story a little bit. But at the end of class, one of the students, the other students who happened to be the editor of the literary magazine on campus, the Empty Cup Review, approached me and solicited the story for inclusion in the magazine. And it was printed there, so this was my first publication. So what did I learn from this? That's a good question, which I'm asking myself. But really one of the things I think I learned that was most important was that characters who elicit a reaction are very important to my storytelling. And so I'm always on the lookout for characters who are going to cause readers to think or to react or somehow get them to feel something. So this story was actually inspired by this kind of idea of public figures, movie stars or sports stars or politicians, whatever, having a secret, something that they don't want the public to know, but that people around them have to know, like something that their friends and loved ones would know about them, but they want to keep segregated or hidden from the general public. So the idea started with that, and these two brothers, one of whom's a movie star and very well known and kind of a tough guy, every man sort of, the tough guy in the movies. And then his brother, who is not a tough guy. He's kind of the antithesis of that in a way. But he's also his brother's right-hand man. So he's kind of the assistant slash brother slash person in the know. So I added in some sibling rivalry into the story, so that it wasn't just about secrets, but it was also about how we react to secrets, how people react to a secret. Now, I'm not famous or a sibling, so I was trying to really put myself in the shoes of someone else, in the place of what we call the other in literature, writing about the other, people who are not ourselves. And, that's one of the things that really intrigues me, both about the literature I read, but also in the things I write, is putting myself in the shoes of someone else with very different experiences and very different outlooks on life from mine, and trying to imagine and create a world based on that. But it really wasn't that hard to try, sort of imagine, even though I don't have any siblings of my own, it really wasn't that hard to try to imagine how a kind of less famous sibling might hold some resentments, hold some things against the more famous brother, especially when you have some sort of unresolved family issues going on kind of in the background. So that's really where this story started from. Now, this is a very early short story. Like I said, 1995, and my first published piece. It was about maybe the third or fourth finished story that I actually, started, completed, and had in sort of a final draft, so to speak. And so, I look back on a few of the moments in the story now, and I think, wow, I really should do this over, or I would definitely do it differently today. But I resist the urge to do it over or to rewrite it, because there's a sort of strange pride and definitely an affection for this sort of firstborn of many stories. And so that's why I have put it in the book and continue to just kind of leave it alone. Let it be what it is and enjoy it for what it is. Now, one major area of weakness, I think, in the story is the setting, because the island where I set this story is a completely made up and fictional place. I didn't base it on anywhere I'd ever been or anywhere real. And usually, even when I make up a setting or kind of create a new location, it's parts of it are still based on places I've been, maybe places I've lived or visited or have a familiarity with, and I'll mix and match different things and put them together into a new place. But this setting is pretty incomplete in a lot of ways because I was just making it up as I went along. I didn't realize at the time how important setting really is to my work and has become to my work over the years. So that's one of the areas that when I look back on this piece, I really try to learn from. I notice it now, and it makes me cringe a little bit, but we'll go with it. I also think that the characters could be a little more layered and subtle. They are fine in a lot of ways, and I think they're interesting, and obviously at least one editor liked it. But for me, I think this was kind of the beginning of me trying to figure out different ways to develop characters in a deeper way. And not just in the things that they experience or the thoughts that they have, but even in their physical actions and the things that they say and the internal push and pull between what they believe and what they say and what they do. Those things aren't as prominent here as they maybe are in some of my later work, but I still think there are some benefits, some things I learned about character in this story. I still really kind of like this story for a lot of reasons, and I even played with the idea a while back of turning this into a stage play, which would have been. I really don't know why I had this idea at one point that this would make an interesting stage play if I kind of rewrote it and moved some of the pieces around. It never quite got there, and I'm not a playwright by any means, so it's just a short story for now, and probably always will be. So this is a reading from Things He Wasn't Supposed to Do, published in 1995 in the Empty Cup Review. I'm going to pick it up a few pages into the story, where the narrator has recently disposed of his brother's body in the ocean and is returning by boat to the condo where he and his brother live on an island in kind of the off-season of the brother's work. The boat was close enough to allow me a glimpse of the condo, white with a brick-red roof, nestled amid the trees and deepening shadows. The buoys marked the channel into the tiny bay, and I slowed down and slid almost silently into our dock. I took a quick inventory of the other boats, all present and accounted for. We were always the last to come in off the water. The others never stayed out past sunset. After I secured the boat, I climbed the dark, winding stone walkway snaking through the undergrowth, up a little hill to the office of the condo building. Before heading to my room, I stopped in and asked about a package I was expecting from my office in California. "No package," said Mrs. Singer, the building's manager, from behind the desk where she sat playing chess with her school-aged granddaughter who was visiting. "Where's the other Mr. Tabler this evening?" "Oh, you know Frank. He headed on down to the beach," I said, shifting through the mail in our mail slot. "He says the moonrise on a night like this is spectacular." Mrs. Singer shook her head and moved her bishop to put her granddaughter's king in a precarious position. I smelled the special blend of coffee she always kept brewing in the lobby. I took my time, pouring myself a cup of coffee with a touch of cream and a spoonful of sugar. "He spends the whole day out on a boat, then wants to walk along the beach," Mrs. Singer said. "Your brother is enchanted by the sea." I said, "Sometimes I think he would rather be poor and unknown and live here than go back to the glamour of his work." I sipped the coffee and pretended to be interested in the chess game. The coffee was perfectly balanced, full of flavor, without a hint of the heavy acidic afterburn of the coffee in most hotel lobbies. After all the years we'd been living there, she still refused to tell me where she got the coffee. It was perhaps the only thing I would miss about this place. "Live here full time," the granddaughter said. "That might be nice for him, but it would be terrible for those of us who love his movies." I smiled at the girl. She had waited 3 days before asking Frank for an autograph. Mrs. Singer whispered to me that her granddaughter thought Frank was sexy. A 15-year-old girl finding a 53-year-old man sexy churned my stomach. But I smiled and watched as Frank signed a picture of himself and gave her a chaste peck on the cheek. That had been just the day before. His final autograph, as it would turn out. I don't think you have anything to worry about, I told her between sips. Frank feels a responsibility to his fans. Nothing short of death could make him give up acting. The chess players concentrated on their game, and I pretended to read a letter from my stockbroker. It was the kind of silence that dominated life on this end of the island. Occasionally, one of the old retired coots would send up a yell about an unusually good hand of euchre, but this was the entirety of the nightlife. I read the letter for what seemed like an appropriate amount of time. I wanted to appear unrushed, but to stay too long in the lobby would attract attention as well, so I folded the letter, refilled my coffee, and turned towards the door. Mrs. Singer was the kind of person who couldn't just let me leave, so she said, "Your brother loves this place so much. I'm surprised he hasn't made a movie here, so he could have the best of both worlds." A movie on this island? That would be the most boring movie ever. "He does love it here," I said, "so much so he wants to be buried at sea just off the coast when he dies." I left them to their game and went to the condo. The first thing I noticed when I walked into the room and turned on the light was Frank's briefcase, laying open on the table. It was an immediate, harsh reminder that he wouldn't be back. It stood there mocking me, reminding me of the loss of my brother. I wanted to be rid of the thing, be rid of everything, purge the room of every memory of Frank, but I decided to leave it untouched. Thinking the plan through the night before, I had decided to leave most everything exactly where it was, except for a few specific items. I would leave his room untouched, his clothes unmoved, his toiletries undisturbed. I promised myself I would only tamper with those items that would give away Frank's secret. I had promised him I would protect him, and I intended to keep that promise.